out of Washington, D.C., Gianno Caldwell. And so, his story, he doesn't have, the political history in which to run on, which is typically what you're going to see from a number of the candidates. He's kind of the outsider, as is Donald Trump. So he's running on his personal story. And one of the personal stories that he has wanted to hold on to dearly is that there was a moment that was transformational for him, and that, he was either stabbing somebody, throwing bricks, going at his mother with a hammer. He's asked about that by way of questions being asked to people who knew him, who say, that's an unrecognizable Dr. Ben Carson. And is it a remarkable thing, or even an extraordinary thing, that he doesn't like the idea that he's now being asked about something that he laid out there, and he wants to really hold on to that moment of a violent past. He said, he had this moment of anger, and so this is something that he is campaigning on. Help us understand. This is very complex. Yeah. It's a little confusing, but this is his story and this is his fight. Help us understand what's going on here.
Well, when people say that it's unrecognizable by those that are around him when he was a little bit younger, we're talking about folks back when he was in high school, elementary school, and I know that that was a story done by CNN, the investigation done by CNN. He went to a high school of over 2,000 people. There were 9 people talked to. And of those 9 people, there was one individual named by the name of Dixon who said that, yeah, I remember rumors of those things. I just really didn't know if they were 100% accurate or not. The truth of the matter is no one will ever know everything that happens behind closed doors. And a number of the folks in which CNN spoke to said those exact same words. So at the end of the day, you think about situations that happen on the news when there's a crime that's committed and the news will interview someone and says, do you think that was in that person's character? And everyone says no. But at the end of the day, that person that did a number of acts and no one knew about it. So there's not going to be a way for everyone to know every single thing that has happened in somebody's life 50 plus years ago.
Except in his case, when you are running just on your character, and he's, sharing this story and saying, this is part of my past, this is who I am, etc., and no one can kind of corroborate it. Those who seem to know him well, a next-door neighbor or people have gone to school with, and now it's almost as if he, instead of it sounding like it's a transformational moment and he's sharing that, it almost is now like he wants to use this as bragging rights. Like, come on, I'm trying to convince you. I really did have this moment. And maybe it seems a little strange to some.
I disagree. I disagree with that. I don't think that he would ever. Who wants to use this as bragging rights? He grew up in an inner city Detroit. Poverty. His mom was illiterate. Who wants to brag about those kind of things?
The tone in some of those interviews about how he's explaining it, it's almost like it's,
the tone has changed. The tone has changed for one reason only. And we know that Dr. Ben Carson has always been mild-mannered in any interview. He's the most likable candidate, according to polls. He's the most credible candidate. And he was the only candidate in one of the recent polls that could beat Hillary Clinton. So at the end of the day...
Gianno, it goes beyond credibility and likability. The Wall Street Journal did a great piece yesterday where they went through his accounts, through his 9 books and his speeches. And there are several accounts, many of them verifiable. This is what reporting is. Reporting isn't just going to ask random people that went to high school with him. They went through police records where, he said that he was held up at a Popeyes. Well, guess what? There's no police record of that. He said that
and
after the MLK...
Said in that instance that
he said that after the MLK protest, he brought in white students into a biology lab and protected them from other black students, which is an interesting narrative in its own, and he protected them. Well, guess what? None of those white students that he claimed he protected actually said that. And the class that he said he took at Yale, he said that term papers were burned, and that he decided he was going to take the new term, do the new term paper, and guess what? There's no verification of that class. There's several accounts in his record where none of this is true. And I think it's pathological. I think that someone who thinks he can never have run for office and run for president and not be held to account based on his one thing and one thing alone, and that's his character. That's what he's running on.
So then, Gianno, address that, because he is talking about things in which there are witnesses. He even writes about, he tells a story that there are all these people, but then none of these people have surfaced. He did say a couple of days ago where he said, well, Bob, I just talked to Bob yesterday, in fact, and if Bob wants to, Bob will come come forward, and now nothing more
This is the
about
truth
that.
of
But
the
then
matter.
he even
Yeah.
uses the word pathological. He says, you know, I had this moment of pathological anger.
Yeah, that was
And it's
when
an
he was
interesting choice
13,
of words.
14, and that's when he was 13 or 14 years old. There's a lot of people when they're in their early teens that have this pathological anger. That is normal. That's something that we regularly see in our high schools. That's nothing new. Going back to Nomiki's point, when you're talking about the Popeyes incident, that was over 50 years ago.
But
When
he
you talk
just
about
talked
him
about
pulling
that
in
this summer.
students,
He
when
just
you-
talked about
when-
this summer, though.
Yeah.
Right. In terms of not being able to find any police records, he said that he didn't even stick around for the police to even take any statements. He wanted to get out of there. When you think about back in the 60s, when he said that he protected the white students, there was a lot going on in Detroit. That is
Okay.
it's very possible that
All right.
could have happened.
What about the
Okay.
class
And no one's
then?
gonna, no one's gonna,
Inventing
no
a
one's
class?
gonna,
All right.
I'm
He said
sorry?
that there was a picture of him taken, put into the Yale yearbook. Guess what? They couldn't find that picture. You know, there's so many little stories along the way. At some point, you have to say, okay, come on, like,
right.
let's be real here.
So I wish we could go on, because there's so much more to talk about this, and I love that you're both really fired up about it and are defending your positions on it. It is fascinating, and it's not going away. But for now, we're going to have to take a pause, and maybe we can resume this conversation at another time, because, yeah, this is something that is going to be dogging his campaign, clearly, for days to come, if not weeks. We'll see. Nomiki Konst, Gianno Caldwell, thanks so much
Thank
to
you for
both of you.
having me.
Appreciate it. And we'll be right back.